Mr. Soboroff, how you doing?
Don't ask me that. I
Same.
always ask people, I'll talk to you whatever you want to talk about, but two requests. Don't ask me how I'm doing, because I'm running on adrenaline, so you don't know how you're doing. And the second question is, don't say I told you so.
It sounds like we're almost cut from the same cloth. When we ran into each other last week, and I've been hearing a lot about you, I just thought I got to grab you and
Well,
have a conversation.
The whole fire, this was God's will. This was an act of God. It was a perfect storm. Everything went wrong, and certain things got saved. And you guys got saved.
Yeah.
And you got to look, but there's a reason for that. And what you're doing now in communicating with your members and the public, I think is more important than ever, and probably more important because of what happened.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and you're totally right. I mean, if you look at the front of us, if you look to the left and you look to the right, to some degree to the back, you see nothing but destruction, and all of a sudden we're standing still.
You know why?
You tell me.
I'm not a scientist,
Okay.
but what I've been told by the Army Corps, while you'll see, 4 houses gone, then 1 house perfect, and then 3 houses gone, or if you look in this commercial area where things seem to have been skipped, I thought it was because of the embers. I thought the embers they were the size of footballs. They were going 100 miles an hour. But they said it wasn't. They said that the heat, which was so extreme, created its own virtual tornadoes. And these tornadoes, sort of like earthquake veins, would just skip around. And that's why it happened. That's the result.
It really is baffling, so that makes a lot of sense. And for people to hear that, it's probably enlightening. Because if I'm driving down Sunset, you see like a gigantic metal frame that's
Sure.
about 4 feet thick,
Sure.
all bent like a pretzel. And then a few lots down, the house is fine, sort of thing.
I got a C in science in high school, and I don't think I took it in college. But the planet Venus is the hottest planet. It's 800 degrees. Aluminum melts at 1,200 degrees. Glass breaks, but doesn't melt till 1,600 degrees.
Gotcha.
And if you take a cooking pot, cast iron pot, that will melt at 2,200 degrees. And as the heat went from area to area, the temperature was over 2,000 degrees.
Wow.
So what they're finding is that they're finding when they go to do the phase 2, in other words, the lot clearance, the debris removal, so much has melted, they can move a little faster than they would have. That doesn't mean they're not toxic, though.
Sure. Well, this is a type of information that I think the public, or even myself, can't even fathom or explain when it comes to the destruction that took place. And so it's
hard to intellectualize.
Exactly.
It's hard to intellectualize. And if you can see it when you're here. Also, Google Maps did us a favor. They flew it again. And so if you go on Google Maps,
okay,
the Palisades is in basically real time. It was just a couple days ago.
Wow.
You can put an address in. You can, with great clarity, you can see almost anything. And you can take a tour of any street or any church or this building, and it's really remarkable. And I hope it will save people from wanting to drive around and see it.
Yeah.
Because of 2 reasons. One, it creates traffic, and we ain't seen nothing yet when it comes to traffic. And 2, it's unsafe.
Right.
and people don't realize it.
Well, I'm glad you're mentioning that because there's a lot of anxiety about coming back in. But then you hear a lot of mixed feelings that when people do get in and they see their lot, they almost want to get out pretty as fast as they came in. And maybe there's some closure to that as well.
I think that there's
But-
the one thing consistent about that is that there is no consistency.
Gotcha.
The mental health aspects of this, and certainly people in the military know mental health aspects with PTSD and all the things that you guys, men and women, have gone through. But this is a mourning process, and people will be changing their minds rapidly. And they'll be going from, no, I'm not going to do it, yes, I'm going to do it, then they'll see the price, then they're not going to do it, or their kids don't want to move back. There's the possibility of a displacement of over 50% here in the Palisades, which that doesn't mean the buildings will be empty. They won't, but they'll be more expensive because the costs are going to be higher than people thought. The insurance is not what people want, and then just the idea of what's going to be happening, just to move 150,000 truckloads of debris off of these sites. So in a year, that's 500 a day. I've never seen, maybe you have, Joe, but I've never seen 50 trucks in the Palisades.
No,
And now you're
not
gonna
in the
see
Palisades.
500 a day
Wow.
for a year. All going down to Mescal now, which will make it a little bit easier.
You know, we haven't talked very long on this podcast, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm kind of reinforced that you're the right guy for the job. I mean, it sounds like you understand the psychology of it as well, because you know that is going to have to be dealt with in a lot of decisions, and we'll get to the Builders Alliance here in a bit. But I ran across you many years ago at Playa Vista project, and I was in the security business, and I'm trying to get security over there, and then I saw you on billboards running for mayor, that sort of thing. Had being a developer, construction, was that something that that's what you aimed for out of college, or how did that happen?
When I got out of college, I finished college in 1970, and then went to graduate school for a year. We had the lottery, the Vietnam lottery.
Oh, okay.
I was a senior in college, heading to graduate school, and I remember where we were sitting in some place and having dinner with a bunch of buddies, and I remember I was having fried chicken, and my number came up 11, which means I'm going. So after I pulled the bone out of my throat from the chicken, I was in ROTC, but
What college?
University of Arizona.
Oh, okay.
But, a little secret here for your listeners, I got demoted at ROTC because one day I was running late and I didn't have a chance to spit shine my shoes, but I had a brand new pair of saddle shoes. That's what people wore in those days. And the tips of my saddle shoes were just spit shine black. So I just pulled my pants down a little bit, and that was it. But when they did the inspection, they caught me. So I got a little demotion there. But anyway, I enlisted because I didn't want to get drafted, but I had some eye problems, and I flunked the physical.
Okay.
So that was my experience. I was interested in the stock market and in real estate. The stock market was tanking then, like it is right now, and my folks owned a retail store. They sold linens, and they worked hard. And their profit was about 5% of their sales.
A lot of people don't realize that, how low profit margins are.
You got to be a genius to
That's
make
right.
money in retail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Volume, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
So anyway, the landlord got 5% of sales too. He didn't have to do nothing, open the mailbox. So I figured, you know what, I'd rather be on the other side of the mailbox. So I got interested in real estate and went to work for Ben Weingart. If you've heard of the Weingart Center, the Weingart Foundation, the Weingart YMCA's. He started the Union Rescue Mission out here, and learned real estate from him and a guy by the name of Joe Eichenbaum. Later on, I liked real estate because it wasn't a function of how much time you put in, it was a function of what you got done.
Oh, okay.
And I always wanted to have a big family, because the unhappiest people I knew were all these rich people who on their dying days said they didn't spend any time with their family or didn't have family. So I said, I'm not doing that. So I always went home at 5 o'clock. We had 5 kids, lived not just a few blocks from here. And I started doing public service. Well, when I was in college, I was in Big Brother, so I had a 10-year-old little brother. It was one of the first interracial assignments in America. And he now is, it's been 56 years. So we've had this, the same relationship.
Oh, okay.
So it's pretty cool. He's a grandfather too now. And I was over here at the park at the recreation center with my youngest son, with my only son at that time, he was 2. And I hurt myself on the playground structure. And I went into the office and said, hey, you got a Band-Aid there. He opened this cabinet that I thought had sporting goods in it, but it was all full of first aid equipment. I said, well, what is that? He goes, oh, people get hurt here every day. I said, well, why don't you get new equipment? He goes, we're on the list for 11 and a half years to get it. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to just get the neighbors and rally and try and raise the money, but I'm not going to go to the city and say, you're stupid, what are you doing, you know, you're a bunch of this. I'm not going to go that negative way, I'm going to go positive way. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know, I've seen a couple of these playgrounds that you guys have been building, they're really cool. If I hired the architect and raised the money, could I do one here? They said, sure. We did it in 47 days.
Wow. You were savvy very early on, sounds like.
Well, I was desperate because we were having a lot of kids.
All right.
And that park changed the neighborhood.
Oh.
The plaque is still up there. It's 40 years.
Oh, wow.
And that park, Palisades, turned into a younger community, one that had a great park and playground. And that's one of my priorities right now as a chief recovery officer of bringing that park, that library, right in that area, that Ralph's that just sort of bends right around into here.
Right.
First, bring them back first, because it's a message to the community that we're back.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that, and maybe I heard it somewhere, but my short experience in construction, when I had my business, I did a few construction projects, room additions, that sort of thing, to get cash flow going so I can get my other business going. And it was a nightmare.
It is.
It was an absolute nightmare, especially if you don't, a guy like me who doesn't have a lot of boundaries, so I'll take phone calls all the time, contractors trying to take advantage, et cetera, et cetera. I learned a lot about negotiation, but where I'm going with this is that when we met last week, or when we hosted your discussion with the
Builders.
The Builders Alliance and this proposed plan you are bringing forth, I was super impressed with how this seems like it is a very complicated situation, and you narrowed it down to digestible categories, and you're able.
I like to say anybody can make simple things complicated,
right?
But it's very hard to make complicated things simple.
And you guys made it simple. You want to talk about that?
Well, the biggest problem that we're going to have here is the cost of construction of reconstructing anything. Just like when you started, will be way more than people thought. We have some issues now. The stars are not aligned for efficiency. You have giant tariffs going on that are raising cost of goods. You have cost of goods shortages. You have labor shortages. And then you have just the numbers. In this council district, last year, 46 building permits were, I'm sorry, 400 building permits, including kitchen remodels and things, little stuff, were issued. Now we've got 6,000. How is the system going to be able to swallow it? So you have to take all these ideas. And what the builders have come up with is areas of home building have gotten really sophisticated and improved and cutting edge. But in people's minds, they don't think of it that way. They don't think of modular housing. They don't think of housing that's prefab housing. They don't think of some of these alternatives of people who build 50, 60, 80 houses at once. Mostly you see them in Orange County and in Inland Empire, but how those can be adapted to be almost custom homes at half the price. And if one of your goals, like mine is to keep Palisadians in the Palisades, you got to do one or two things. You got to give them more money, or you got to reduce the cost of what's going to take place.
And maybe a little both.
I don't know where the money's going to, the money comes from the, fair plan or from your insurance. But again, usually you gotta push to get that.
Right.
And you don't want to just listen. You want to do a little bit of negotiating, like you talked about. And then the costs are going to be the costs. And so if you take out of your mind, it's got to be a custom home. It can be it can have components of prefab, components of different kinds of materials. It'll look the same, it'll feel the same, and it can cost half. Well, that can be the difference between somebody saying, I can't do this, and I can do this.
Well, that's why I thought it was like really important that we get together and at least if we can be of help in getting that information out there.
That's why I'm here, sir.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Because it sounds really solid. And the few people that I've talked to that were contemplating whether they should go or stay, this was a bit of a hope. Like, okay, there's something being proposed. There's a
They'll have hopes along the way, and they'll have disappointments
right.
along the way.
And I think I'm
and
hoping they're prepared or conditioned, well, not conditioned, but prepared for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know because that's why we're calling in all kinds of mental health experts and people who've dealt with catastrophes, because people go through different stages, and this let's get together rah stage. When your cousins are sleeping on your floor after a couple of weeks.
I guess a little old.
It gets a little old,
Right.
and then we go into anger stages, and why me, and what did I do to deserve? And so, but that's going to keep happening because people don't understand the ramifications of what's going to happen here.
Right.
We're building, they'll be building thousands and thousands of homes, replacing infrastructure under the streets, above the streets. That's going to be disruptive. That's going to take a lot of trucks and a lot of workers.
You're saying trust. I think
Trucks.
Yeah. Oh, trucks.
Trucks.
I was going to say trust.
Yeah.
I
Trust.
guess both.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you have to have that down deep because it's going to be tested with people. Does this guy really know what he's talking about? Does
Right.
that, and I just think that like my wife says, the truth will set you free. If you don't set crazy expectations, that we'll be able to work it out. We'll be able to work it out. Now,
Right.
I can give you some concrete examples of how things will come back faster
Okay.
and then how things will come back slower. The chicken and the egg. People will not want to live in Pacific Palisades if there's no place to shop. I'm not talking about for $5,000 purses. Okay, I'm talking about to shop, to get a haircut, to go to the mailboxes, etc.
Yeah, I lost my haircut.
There you
I
go.
mean, my guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you got a new one that looks like he is doing okay. But
That's gel.
yeah, okay. But what happens is in Playa Vista, we had, which is a wonderful community, although Playa Vista is not the community for Palisades. Palisades
I
is
get
the
it.
community for Palisades.
Sure.
The character, the architecture,
Right.
the way things work. But at Playa Vista, we we did 6,000 homes for 10,000 people. And after the first 1,000 people were in, 1,000, and there's 1,000 people around here right now, okay? We did open some retail just to see if it would work. You can't reopen everything because it won't work. Retailers need people and people need shops. So, but the coffee beans, the pizza places, the ice cream stores, the barber shops, they all became mini city halls, and they opened up very successful. And then a few clothing stores opened, and then a few sushi bars. And so I believe that that's what's going to happen here. My concern is it's got to get torn down before it gets rebuilt. Mm-hmm. And the same break that the residences have, in that the Army Corps will tear down and clear your lot for free if you don't have insurance. If you have insurance, it'll take that portion of your insurance to pay. Does not, it's not included in commercial property. So each one of these property owners, and there's a few big property owners, Topa, which is now Anderson, sure, owns where Bank of America was, mm-hmm, and Cafe Vita was. They also own where Chase Bank was, those two buildings. I'm not talking about those. I'm not talking about the village of Rick Caruso's. I'm talking about the mama papa shops, mm-hmm, or chain stores that are owned by one-off landlords. And those one-off landlords may or may not have the resources to rebuild, and if they do rebuild, it'll cost more, so then they're gonna have to charge the tenants more, and the tenants, it's hard enough.
Right.
It's hard enough. So I'm in a real hurry to try and tear all these buildings down that were damaged by the fire, because they're a blight, and they are a mental reminder, mm-hmm, of the tragedy, and they're unsafe.
Gotcha.
So you can't open an ice cream store next to some guy from another country that decided he wasn't going to tear his building down. So we're going to have to place rules on that to tear them down and replace them with grass, mm-hmm, until the buildings go up.
Every time, the longer I hear you talk, the more I wish you were mayor a few years ago.
No, that's okay. Everything works out for the best.
No, I mean, you've got a great framework for all of this. How did this come about? I'm kind of curious from a curiosity standpoint. When you were given this assignment, did you get a call from the mayor herself?
I did.
I did. Like, what are you calling me for? I mean, how did
No, it didn't go that way. I knew what she was, I knew that she was going to call me.
Okay.
The reason I did is I had heard from many dozens of people that the mayor's office was asking people who to put in this job, and that my name was in the 90-some percent of people. I recommended 3 people, neither of whom were me. Mm-hmm. I recommended Bob Iger. I thought he would be great from he's head of Disney.
Yeah, businessman. Right.
Businessman,
right,
incredible cachet, okay. I recommended Austin Butner, who would run for mayor, but Austin really, really knew his stuff. I think those were the only 2 that I recommended.
Right, but so she called you in the middle of the night or in the morning or in the day? I mean,
it was during the day, and when the phone rang, I just knew it. So I knew she was going to call because too many people were recommending that she call for her not to. And so I did some homework. Okay, so before I came here, I did some homework. Mm-hmm. That's what I do. Right. That's what people do when you're respectful of others. And so I did some homework as to the scope of what was going on and how it needed to be put together, and how many thousands and thousands of people it would take, and how I could help in what she calls phase 1 of basically organizing it and making recommendations. So when she called, She really wanted me to do it.
Gotcha.
She really wanted me to do it. She didn't beg me to do it,
I understand.
okay? But she said, you're from this community, this portion. You have empathy for the other portion of the community, which is Altadena. And you have empathy for the people who work here, who can't afford to live here. And I think that that's enough. And it takes over what I lacked in the hard construction skills, because I don't have those. But I had the chief operating officer of Playa Vista,
Right.
Randy, who became president of Playa Vista when it was finished and I left, that did know those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I said, well, if you bring in Randy, but I really don't want a blue ribbon committee because
Sure. Slow things down.
you get 500 people,
Right.
will want to be on it. I'll pick 10, and then 490 will be mad at me when none of them are mad at me now.
I have a real interesting, I think, a cool little story regarding Mayor Bass. I was on my way to Sacramento one time to try to get incorporated in something. I think it was plumbing. Just trying to be an entrepreneur. And I'm sitting next to a person on Southwest Airlines on the front row, and she had 2 phones. Back then it was Nextel.
Yeah.
And I said, it must be important. She was, well, I'm a legislator. And I said, well, what do you do? Well, I'm Speaker of the House at that time for California. So what's your name? Karen Bass.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time I was a registered, not in her party. I'm actually an independent, but
Yeah.
I was pretty,
I was a Republican for 50 years,
right.
and now I'm an independent.
Yeah, so I told her I was a Republican, and I couldn't, I gotta say, it was one of the most polite conversations all the way over there, and I could see why she is in position. She was just a very, at least my encounter was very, very personable and very, 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 very respectful.
I met her when I was chair of a $2 billion school bond for LAUSD. And it was passed by the voters if there was an oversight committee to make sure the district didn't throw away the money. And I was a chair of that oversight committee. And she came in, she was working for an organization called the Community Coalition with Marquise Harris Dawson, who's now president of City Council. And they came in with a bunch of kids. And there was a big crowd there, and everybody sort of thought, oh, God, here goes another disruption, and they're saying to me, get them out of here and all this stuff. And I said, no, I want to listen to them. They were so respectful, like you say. They had done so much homework, like you say. I looked at the papers of what we were going to do to a number of those schools, and I listened to what they said, and I said, well, where did you get your information? And they said the janitors.
Okay.
And our parents and ourselves. And I'm thinking, where did we get our information? Paving contractors that wanted to repave every parking lot at the school. And so what we wound up doing is I asked them, I said, if you guys will do some homework and come back here, go back, talk to the janitors, talk to the parents in the schools that they represented. These were inner city schools of about 120 schools. Make me a list of the top 20 things that you think should be done. And they did. It was incredible. And it cost $130 million.
Wow.
So what we did is we took $130 million out of the asphalt budget and said, instead of repaving all the parking lots, let's just repave what's needed and put grass in some of the other areas for shade and trees and stuff, and let's take that $130 million, and that's what we did. And that's how I met Karen Bass, and that's why it's why I voted for her, because I felt that she was able to do things in a respectful way that could bring more money to Los Angeles.
Right.
She had federal experience, she had state experience, and she had local experience,
Right.
and so I voted for her.
I get that, actually. Also what I'm hearing is you also have a practical approach to things. Just like you said, instead of black and white. Okay, you heard one thing from one expert, another thing from one expert. You kind of looked at both of them and you came up to a practical sort of approach, a
Yes,
solution.
sort of. I mean, it's something my son, I have a son who works for NBC News, and he's very successful there. And he wrote a book that was a New York Times bestseller, and they made a film about it. And he taught me that even if somebody's angry at you, if you can lay back and sort of like go to this happy place, they may say something that's meaningful. And I had that experience as police commissioner when I would stand, when I'm standing in front of
I
for
bet.
10 years, and people come up, I wish Hitler would have got your parents. I mean, just like okay, well, it sort of turns you off to listening to them.
Sure, yeah.
But maybe they would have maybe there was something in there, because their psychology was screwed up, not mine.
Right.
And so I learned to listen more, and also that things make sense. And when you go from A to Z, things don't make sense. When you go from A to B to C to D, they do make sense. And so that's the way I've always tried to deal with the projects I've worked on, like Staples Center and the Alameda Corridor and the park system and the school system, and now this.
No, I mean, you've got a really big reputation in regards to those big projects. So I want to summarize what I thought I heard, and you can kind of maybe correct me here on Thursday night in a simple way, hopefully, that Builders Alliance would basically consist of grouping of contractors or developers, however you want to describe that, in a way that they have pre-designed plans already approved, right? And I thought I heard the number 4 to 5 per.
It could be 4 to 5, and there could be 4 to 5 companies, so you could have 20 options.
Gotcha. So, and that's another point to be made that we're still looking at adjusting as you're moving along and learning
Right.
more about stuff.
Right.
Right. You'll have an office here in the Palisades. Ideally, I think that was the plan, to have an office.
Good idea.
Right. And then as far as permitting goes, would they be able to be coming through here, or they would have to go to
Well, they
LA?
would be basically pre-permitted.
Gotcha. That's right.
Pre-permitted.
Right.
So you're picking out a house that will look like a custom house.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying it'll be for the Huntington or for the Riviera.
No, I hear you.
But I'm talking about for the masses of the Palisades,
Right.
where they're one level because they're built on hillsides and you can't block the view corridor
Right.
of your neighbor,
Yeah.
and that they'll be an alternative to custom housing, and then when they buy wood, they
get a
don't go
break
down to
there.
the hardware store and buy a bunch of wood and start sawing it. It's pre-cut. They bring it. They don't have trucks taking away extra trash. They have one dumpster. They build a house, and the only trash is in a dumpster. That's extremely efficient.
Mm.
And with those efficiencies come savings, and with those efficiencies come savings of time, and also of less traffic. So I think that all they're doing is offering an option. We can't force anybody to do
Of
anything.
course, right.
But our option leads to a goal of more people staying than leaving, so you don't have 70% of the people move out.
Right. Again, that's why I think it's so important for people to hear this. And the other thing I noticed when I was at the meeting, there was the experts there were careful not to give a real number on a price per square
You
foot.
can't.
I know.
You can't. It would have gone up by 10% in the last 4 days.
Right. So, but the goal was to be under 1,000, I thought.
Yeah, it'll be. I think that it'll be substantially under 1,000. I
Okay.
mean, the custom
1,000 per
houses will
square
be
foot.
1,000 per square foot to 1,500 or 1,800 a foot. But these kinds of programs could possibly be half. It could possibly be half of that,
That's
depending
something-
on the numbers.
That's really amazing.
Yeah.
That's real amazing.
And you won't be able to tell the difference because you'll be able to customize the exterior
Sure.
and the interior. if you want a bigger baby room you'll be able to do that. So
Right.
we're trying to do is offer options.
Right.
Offer options to, and it's not, they're not modular homes. They're not prefab homes. These are people that build tens, thousands of homes a year that they're manufactured custom homes.
Right. And also, I think under that model, the build time is much quicker.
Much faster.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought I heard 8 months, 6 to 8 months.
I
something
could
like-
see that.
Yeah.
How long did it take you? You said what were you remodeling when you did your first thing?
I probably almost that for a room addition, or for sure a second story.
That is not unusual.
for
Yeah.
sure a second story. I mean, that was my nightmare.
Yeah, speaking of second stories, I
Yeah.
would think, that after things settle down and some rezoning does happen, I would like to see second stories here in the business district, because everything's one floor.
I didn't know that.
And I would like, except for a couple of buildings, like Caruso's building and a couple others are 2 or 3 stories. But I'd like to see, I would like to see apartments above the retail. It would increase business. It would decrease traffic if the apartments are if they're affordable. And people here have this misconception that affordable is for homeless drug addicts.
Right.
And that's not what it is. Affordable in Playa Vista was for cops, firemen, teachers, nurses, and workforce housing.
Mm-hmm.
That's healthy, and it'll make the community a better community.
You know, that's a real important fact there, or important information. I didn't realize that. And you're right, there is a stigma.
It's
with
a
affordable.
misperception.
Right.
And when people say stupid stuff,
Right.
like this one guy got on and said, well, who wants to have a crack house built next to my house?
I know.
I mean, okay, you can say that that's stupidity or it's elitist or racist or whatever you want. I don't think he meant it that way. I just think he was misinformed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I worked with.
Now, if I were to inform him of what I just informed you and he were to say it, then I would say those other things about him.
You don't seem like that kind of guy, but I guess I could see that.
Well,
Yeah.
if I don't like people who are condescending to other people.
Oh.
I don't like people who are racist. I don't
Yeah,
like
I hear you.
people who don't care about other people
Right.
and who live in their own bubble without recognizing there's a big community, neighborhood, and world out there.
Right. Well, especially out in Los Angeles, right? We're a different demographic when it comes to someone paying $3,000 a month versus someone paying $3,000 a month in San Antonio, Texas, where I'm from.
That's why I got a whole bunch of people to put up money and lower rents so we could get 200 more cops moved in to Los Angeles,
Oh,
which was a
okay.
program that we did when I was police commissioner.
Right. Well, looks like we're coming to a landing here. How would they, if someone had more questions, is there a website that I redirect them to?
I think that there are a lot of I think that there are a lot of websites. If someone thinks they need me personally to answer,
Mm-hmm.
talk to you.
I will put my number up there.
Yeah, talk to you.
Right.
Well,
That wasn't a joke, because you're not laughing there. You said talk to me.
talk to you.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Well, have you ever called me when I don't call you right back?
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever texted me when
you've
I
been-
don't
you-
text back?
you've
Have
been
you ever
awesome.
emailed me when I don't email back?
Right.
I have everybody's got their own little issues. I have a thing called empty mailbox syndrome.
Wow. Okay.
I answer everything.
No, I was
Okay.
shocked when
Yeah.
how fast you got back to me
Yeah.
the first time.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
So, yep.
Right.
Yep.
Well, the other thing.
Remember, my term is over April 11th.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a month from now.
And what happens after that?
Well, I believe that by following the suggestions that we made, by some of the hires of some of the engineering firms and large-scale firms to do the kind of utility work, the library's plans are almost done, the park's plans are almost done.
That's a lot of work.
Ralph's is about to tear the building down. There's a lot, but the mayor will appoint a group. I think that, they've hired somebody. It's called Haggerty Construction. And they're a very large scale construction firm to basically, I'm putting the trains on the track,
Gotcha.
but I'm not driving them to the end. I would have done it for 2 years, but I think that they just wanted me to get it going
Gotcha.
because it gets very, very expensive.
Well, not only that, again, getting it going, again, based on everything that we've talked to up to this point, your approach and practicality to all this is what we needed at the time.
Yeah,
Seriously, because it's a complex situation.
I think so.
Brought down to a
My kids are
simple-
proud,
Right,
I think so. When I was younger, when I was like 5 years old, my dad bought me a Lionel train set.
Mm.
And he said, I'm going to show you how to put the train on the track, because if the train doesn't get on the track, it ain't ever going to go anywhere. And that's sort of the way I feel about this.
Wow. Well, glad we're able to host you, and we'd love to work with you in any way, capacity,
Well,
shape,
you've
or
shown
form.
that, and you've
Right.
shown that, and your people here all share your camaraderie and your commitment, and that's not easy to do in government work, if you consider this government work,
Right.
or business work.
Nonprofit, right?
Yeah, a nonprofit. Morale is really important.
It is. I think we have found ourselves in such a unique situation, unlike ever before, ever in our lives,
Yeah.
that I think it is the veteran commonality as well as the sons and the auxiliary that sort of became a natural attraction when it came to, hey, how can we do something together and do it the best we can in spite of like how we're feeling,
Yeah.
in spite of losing stuff. So I think that's where we are. I want to make sure I remind you, or not remind you, invite you. We're going to have several things throughout the next 2 months, 3 months
Mhm.
that we didn't want to lose sight of in regards to our commitment and not having this
I think it's
disaster
very
hold
good.
us back.
Good.
And one was we have a scouts trip up. And I'm just saying this for the viewers, not for us to give you a private boat up there, but we're going to do an Emerald Bay trip. We also have a Memorial Day weekend, so we'll have a Memorial Day ceremony.
Wonderful.
Right, but we're also having a gala where we're honoring all the media, veterans who are in media. It's the
Good.
first time ever
Wonderful.
at the Beverly Wilshire
Wonderful.
with some dignitaries. We'd like to invite you to that.
Sure.
And then we'll have our 4th of July parade. So
Yeah.
we're making sure that we're committing
Yep.
to those things.
Those
Did I miss
those
anything, Jared?
those are all important. I think
Right.
that one hope I have as the Palisades changes, and it's going to change. It's going to you're going to have a generation of change in 5 years. I hope that people learn more about what you do, and learn and have empathy and room for the veterans and the people that you serve. Because people around here have a tendency to go into this privileged bubble. I can say it, you don't have to.
That's right.
Okay? And only sort of worry about what's going on with them. And I can tell you from experience that going outside that bubble, especially with your children, even if it's just bringing them over here to meet you, is a very broadening thing. And I hope that you guys will promote yourself and market yourself. Double down on that.
I agree with that. And actually, I got to give a shout out to Jim Craig, the past commander, because he had started that under his watch. You know, I've been at this like 8 months, and
Yeah.
I've got all of
No,
this. I'm dealing with.
he's wonderful.
Right. He opened up the building, had the renovation, and we had pandemic and all this other
You
stuff.
guys
but-
are the landlord to CVS, right?
Right.
They're opening pretty soon,
Right.
right?
They're working very fast. And what we hear, actually, the post office is going to be sooner than later, actually.
Good.
So it's all happening. Mr. Soboroff, I'm so glad that we met.
Really tied my fingers up. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. In charge of the rebuild and up until April what?
April 11th.
April 11th.
I'll be doing a report. I'll be doing basically state of the effort
Okay.
report, saying what trains are on the track and making my recommendations on how to keep them on the track, which is going to involve, it's going to take a lot more people.